Christopher Markowski, how you doing, sir?
Hey, how are you?
Doing very well. The Watchdog on Wall Street, political and economic expert, host of one of the longest-running nationally syndicated financial radio shows. I love the title, Uncle Sam the Drug Pusher. That's really nice. Let's talk about
We want you.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Walter White has got nothing on Uncle Sam.
Yeah, there you go. I'm just reading some of these figures and facts. I don't even know where to begin with this interview because there's so much to talk about. A slew of government welfare programs spending on the rise. Should the government check into rehab? Well, we are what now? Is it $16 trillion in debt? Is that where we are now?
Well, why would the government want to check into rehab? They're the ones that's peddling the dope. It's just there's so many different analogies you can use to talk about how detrimental the welfare state has been on our society as a whole. And you take a look at some of the symptoms of things that go along with welfare here in our society, and it's very much akin to drug abuse. And you don't tell me people do not get addicted to government assistance. That we have got a problem here in this country with close to 50 million people are on food stamps, 107 million people getting some sort of welfare. This doesn't bode well for our future at all, turning ourselves into a welfare state. I find it extraordinary that, in California right now, crops, believe it or not, crops are dying on the vine. They don't have people out there that can actually go pick the crops and go ahead and do the work that is available. I'm sorry. I used to clean toilets when I was younger. I used to work as a janitor. If I had to go out there and pick crops to feed my family, I'd do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know what's wrong with people nowadays. I'm too good to do that. You're too good to do this type of work. It's absurd to me.
Yeah, I'm in a situation. I'm the mindset that obviously there are people who need our help. The mentally ill certainly need our help. Single mothers who've been stabbed in the back by their wonderful boyfriends or husbands. I mean, people do need our help. There's no question about it. But
safety nets are fine.
Yeah, safety nets are fine.
But a safety net is one that gets you back on your feet,
right,
and gets you moving forward again. When you get somebody addicted to some sort of welfare, basically what you're doing is you're taking away all of God, all the gifts that God gave you, the talents that each and every one of us have that is unique to us. And you beat that down. I mean, it's almost become, at this point in time in our society, it's okay. It's okay. Our government, I can't think of another government on the planet that actively recruits people to get on food stamps. I mean, it's absurd.
We saw a story locally, actually it was a national story, about a man who was taken to jail, some kind of assault charge or whatever. And they have a recording of this guy, because it's a jailhouse phone, and jailhouse phones are recorded. But his request was so preposterous that the recording's gone. I guess one of the guards must have secreted out of the jail or whatever. But this guy is on the phone talking to his brother, and he says, "I've been arrested. I want you to get my EBT card," which, if people don't know what that is, that's what food stamps is called now, EBT. I want you to get my EBT card, go to the ATM, and get my bail money. So now you and I are paying for this guy's goddamn bail money?
Oh, yeah. That's cigarettes.
Oh.
Cigarettes. Gambling. You can use it for gambling, too.
You can gamble with it.
Yeah, you can use it for all sorts of stuff. Oh. It's free money.
It just, how did this get so, well, I know I got so out of control because there are votes there.
Well, sure, you start giving people free things, they're going to keep voting for more free things. I wrote a column that got people's proverbial underwear in a bunch several years ago, entitled "Thank You for Not Voting." And I hate voter registration drives. I hate them. And you get all these holier than thou people saying, "Yeah, you know what? It's a shame that so many people vote on American Idol, but they don't vote in our election." I'm like, "No, it's not. No, it's not." I said, "I don't want idiots voting. That's the last thing in the world that we need. In fact." I believe that, if you're getting any sort of government assistance whatsoever and you are not a U.S. veteran, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. In the same regard that my kids don't decide the bedtime at my household because I pay the mortgage.
Well, that sounds rational to me. It makes complete sense to me, and I've never understood.
Oh, it's insensitive, though. It's insensitive, and it's probably racist, and they'll probably make it racist or something. They'll come up with something.
What's the alternative solution for somebody that today is on food stamps? And I know your quick answer is probably get a job, but you're looking at right now the cost of living, and I've talked to friends where even their spouse has decided to stay home, and they're trying to calculate what's going to make sense for us. How much do I have to make to be able to pay for childcare, to do everything else, so that it actually makes financial sense for me to go to work? And certainly food stamps and welfare is a little bit of a different story, but you look at these 50 million people, how many of those are children, and how many of those children... I was on food stamps as a kid for several years and on the school lunch program and that sort of thing. And without that, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't have survived. So what's the alternative solution? I mean, how do we solve it?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, don't you think that food stamps should be limited? They won't even release what is bought with food stamps.
They should absolutely be limited.
I mean, we can get releases from the federal government in regards to information in regards to our suspect virus programs in Iran that can get out of the administration, but we can't get any information in regards to what is being bought with the food stamp program. I had a listener, what my radio show, send me a receipt from a Michigan grocery store with filet mignon and lobster being bought with food stamps.
That went around on the internet.
I saw that, yeah.
It's this is stuff that you see happen all the time, and we all know that the trick that you can play when you can go ahead and you can get alcohol with these things. I mean, I have no problem. I have no problem with safety nets once again, and the problem is that the people that actually need it are not going to get it. But you also, there used to be some work requirements involved with this thing and getting people back to work. But the reality of the situation today is in America is you can get by without having to work if you really don't want to. You can get Section 8 housing. You can get food stamps. You can get Medicaid. You can get all of these various different things, and you can get by.
It amazes
me. That's problematic. That to me is that's getting somebody addicted to a drug, because that individual has some God-given ability, has some talent, and they're just not using it.
Was it FDR who came up with a brilliant idea? Because that's what I've been told. We were also on welfare and food stamps when I was a kid for a very short period of time. And I do remember the worker, our caseworker, coming to the house saying, well, your husband can't live here. And my mother said, what? She says, well, if you're going to receive food stamps and welfare, he cannot live here. It seems to me to be counterintuitive. It's like, oh, you're going to remove the father from the house, take him away, and then you get all this free money. What? So for me as a guy,
that's part of the problem with the destruction, the family unit that we have here in our society. And
right.
you can, you want to trace the correlation to some of the welfare programs that were instituted in the 1960s, and the destruction of the family and the family unit, and it goes right along with it. It's shameful. It's shameful. It really is. We've got to kind of start having to rethink some of these things. And where the idea I got the whole for the column I wrote, drug pusher, was that you mentioned FDR. FDR said in his State of the Union address when he was instituting some of these welfare programs during the Great Depression, he warned that these things are bad.
Right.
He warned that too much of these things it becomes like a narcotic, and it's not good for the American spirit and the American fiber. And this is FDR. I mean, if a Democrat were to come out and say this today, he would be crucified.
No, it's very true. There's no doubt about that. As we've talked about, the safety nets absolutely are necessary. The one stat that I saw that you had sent us, Medicaid spending in 1966 was $4 billion. Last year it was $242 billion. Now, I know there are a few more people around, but from $4 billion to $242 billion? My God.
Yeah, well, if you want to trace back 50 years, transfer payments to citizens in 1960 was about $25 billion. It's over $2 trillion today.
$2 trillion.
It's absurd.
How do they think we're going to afford to, Christopher?
You can't. That's the point. You can't. We're going to only be able to print money for so long.
Right.
There's going to come a point in time where the money printing thing ain't going to fly. It's going to be over. Like I said, I have a $100 trillion bill in my desk here. It's Zimbabwe note, and it's real, and it's worth 40 cents. And there hasn't been a single society ever that's been able to degrade their currency and print their way out of a terrible situation. Most recently, trying to do this, and aside from Zimbabwe, is you can look to Germany, which didn't end well.
No. So As I said, we're about $16 trillion in debt as we speak. What is our future? I mean, I sometimes wonder, is it smart that I get up and go to work in the morning? I wake up every morning at 4 o'clock. I've been on the same radio show in Minneapolis for 27 years. I then do a podcast. We own part of a construction and real estate company. We own interests in restaurants. I have 5 different jobs, Christopher. 5 different jobs I have. And I don't know how people can sit around and do nothing. And I'm just wondering, is it worth my while, in your opinion, Christopher Markowski? Should I continue to work that hard, or am I just being a fool?
Well, if you don't think that I've had that same thought, and many other people, and my clients have had that same thought, it's in your nature, it's in your blood, and I don't think you'd be happy if you weren't doing it. I kind of look at it that way too. And I think that's what what people kind of need to get back to, and understanding that that's the type of work ethic that built this country. I think that we have such an opportunity here. I mean, we take a look at the $16 trillion in debt, but then you take a look at all of the technologies that we've come up with just over the past several years, and all the energy that we've discovered here, and the great demand that India is going to have and China is going to have, and we can be selling this stuff, and we can get our way out of the mess that we've created for ourselves, and we can just go ahead and do it. We've got a federal register that is just out of control in regards to regulations. We need to pull back from that. We've got a tax code which is just completely skewed to the biggest corporations out there that are able to escape all sorts of loopholes and not make us equal under the law. We need to become the most competitive nation on the planet as far as business is concerned, and we can continue to drop year in, year out. We turn that around. Like I said, it's not going to take much here in this country to turn around. You have to have the will to do it, and you have to have we got to understand that, we cannot go down. What we're doing right now is we're turning ourselves into a European nation, a Western European nation. In fact, in many respects, we're already there.
Yeah, no question about that. It's interesting. One of my deeply held beliefs is test scores. Okay, test scores in America. The highest test scores in America for school K through 12, they're in North Dakota. The state of North Dakota has the highest test scores. They also have the lowest self-esteem. Did you know that? That's a fact. Now,
interesting.
In communities where you have children with high self-esteem, their test scores are terrible. And you're in radio, right? You have the longest-running nationally syndicated financial radio show. So what Arbitron has now done to radio, where everybody gets a trophy like it's T-ball or some damn thing.
Well, believe it or not, you could honestly, if I was going to write my doctoral thesis today, I would kind of trace the whole, nobody loses, it's always a tie, helicopter mom soccer nonsense that's kind of led to our demise. I really think that there's a distinct correlation.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. I deserve these food stamps because I'm a wonderful. You know who Penn Jillette is? Penn and Teller.
Yeah.
You ever heard his or saw his show? He has a show called Bullshit, and this is this is a podcast, so you can say bullshit. But he followed a guy around who has a puppet show. This guy has these little puppets, and he goes to kindergartners and first graders. That's who he talks to. And he tells them how wonderful they are. And several times during his little puppet show, the puppets will go, "What are you kids?" And the kids all go, "I'm special." Right? all little kids. And so Penn Jillette is interviewing this puppeteer about this Mr. Self-Esteem, I'm special puppeteer. And he says, "How many kids have you shown this puppet show to?" And Penn Jillette, the guy says, "Believe it or not," and he's bobbing his head with great confidence, "believe it or not, I've shown this puppet show to over 500,000 children." And Penn Jillette says, 500,000 kids and not one asshole. I love that stuff. That's the funny thing. I spend a lot of my time because I donate my time. I coach lacrosse here in Southwest Florida and built up the lacrosse program down here. And,
the things I try to instill and I point out to my parents right away is that somebody wins and somebody loses.
Right.
And that's just a part of it. And you know what? You want self-esteem. Self-esteem is earned by going out there and actually doing stuff. These nowadays you get kindergarten classes with graduation ceremonies, and it's like, what? I said, what? It's kindergarten.
Every damn year.
No. This is if you actually do something.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what it's supposed to be. All you're doing is degrading all these various different things. It's absurd to me.
We've gotten to the point also where if you are successful, and I'm not talking about flaunting success either, if you're successful, you're a jerk. It's like, what? How did this come about?
Don't you love it when people start pointing out, look at those fancy shoes that she's wearing, and Mr. So-and-so's got a corporate jet. I'm like, you tool. Wait tables tool. I see. Did I like poor people coming into the restaurant, or did I like the people that were buying the $7,500 bottle of wine where I'd get the nice tip on?
Yeah, there you go.
Or the people that work at the Gucci store that are working on commission. What do you think? They're not making a living off the fact that people are buying those products? I mean, it's absurd.
It just amazes me that if you work hard and you're successful, you're an idiot, but I'm so special and my self-esteem is so high, I deserve everything for free.
A lot of people blame Mr. Rogers.
If you go into a job in public service or government, you're somehow better than everybody else. Oh, you're better than the guy that owns the corner diner that employs 15, 20 people? Really?
Right, yeah.
How?
I couldn't agree more. I think this is fascinating, a fascinating topic. We're going to have you on quite often. This is
anytime. I enjoy it.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's fascinating. It's really unusual to run across someone who agrees with everything I say.
Well, we're running schools like it's 1930. That's the other problem.
Yeah,
I think the education system needs to be reformed. I think most kids, you can tell if they're going to be paste eaters when they grow up or if they're actually going to function properly by about the 8th grade, don't you? I mean, a friend of mine owns a bag company. It's purses, but I guess the correct term now is bags. She said she cannot find American seamstresses anymore.
Really?
Yeah. She said, I cannot find them for any reasonable price whatsoever. There's very few people that actually want to take that type of job where they're out working in factories, although I did it. Tom, you did it. You work for a steel. It's like there just seems to be this disconnect right now with education. They don't want to pigeonhole people. Yet I think kids, you know by about the 8th or 9th grade what path they're on. Doesn't mean you have to limit them.
Oh, absolutely. And they have to. You have to kind of isolate and point kids in the right direction. But there's just a belief that every Johnny and Sally needs to go to college, and that's one of the biggest businesses that we have here in this country.
Yes,
colleges and universities are basically hedge funds that have nonprofit status.
Right.
That's what they are.
Trade schools can be a beautiful thing.
I'm Harvard, and I've got some $30-some-odd billion in the planet, and I'm a nonprofit. Really? Really? So the cash position on your whole entire portfolio could pay for the tuition of every single kid that goes to the school, yet you still charge, and you call yourself a nonprofit?
Yeah.
That's funny. What, are you going to buy Nantucket?
I like this guy.
Christopher, seriously. By the way, I changed my mind. I agree with everything you say. That's actually the truth. Christopher Markowski, the Watchdog on Wall Street, political and economic expert, host of one of the... How dare you call yourself an expert, big shot?
I didn't. My publicist did.
Okay. Host of the longest-running nationally syndicated financial radio show. Just a great conversation, and seriously, we'll be reaching out to you very soon because my wife and my daughter are in Iceland, and I know it makes me look like a wealthy prick, but too bad.
You know what? You got to ask them about something. I don't know if you read Michael Lewis's book. He was going around talking. He actually did. It was almost like a book in regards to he went on like this financial destruction tour around the world. In Iceland, they believe in like these little elves and stuff like that. Still,
they do. She said
you cannot like dig and do certain stuff because there's like little elves or things that live under the ground or something.
There's poppy seeds there.
We'll have you back on when they come back and you. One thing my wife told me, she said it's very unusual because you'll walk into a nice restaurant in Reykjavik and sit down, and the server will come over and say, we have a couple of things that aren't on the menu tonight. We have a beautiful roasted puffin, and also the whale steak is delicious. She goes, do you know what a puffin is?
I don't know what a puffin is, but I know whale steak would, you're gonna really tick off some of the environmental wackos, that's for sure.
Apparently there's so many whales on the Icelandic shores that if you don't eat them, that there will be some. They will just die. They'll come up on the beach.
Well, that's the cure for all these endangered species. If you started, we're not short on chickens, right?
No.
If we started eating tigers, there'd be plenty of tigers because someone would find out a way to farm them.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. But look up what a puffin is. They're a little bird that has a kind of like a white head.
Oh, I know what it is. Yes, okay, yeah.
So puffin and whale, that's what you eat. And you have elves and puffin and whales, and you have volcanoes, and you have waterfalls. And he said it's beautiful, but yeah, we'll have to have you back on when Catherine, my wife, and Alex, our daughter, when they get back from Iceland. So,
anytime. Thank you so much for having me.
You're the best. Thank you, Christopher.
You got it. Have a great day, guys.
You too. Christopher
Bye-bye.
Markowski. What a great guest.
I love George Carlin's deal about the Earth. He said, the Earth is just going to be fine. You're going to die.
Yeah,
He's like, the Earth will recover eventually.
The Earth will be fine without you. That's just the way it is. Clayton Cramer. Hello, Clayton.
Yes, hello there.
I was just looking at your I guess, credentials. This is the best way to receive his master's degree in history from Sonoma State University. That's got to be a pretty good place to go to school, I would imagine, Sonoma State University.
Compared to a lot of the places where the California State University system has campuses, central Los Angeles, San Jose, yeah, it's pretty decent.
I would imagine it probably is. It appears to me that you have a great deal in common. First of all, on the Tom Barnard Podcast, my son Andy Barnard and my nephew Sean Barnard are with us as well. Clayton Cramer, historian and author of My Brother Ron, A Personal and Social History of the Institutionalization of the Mentally Ill. Your brother Ron, what kind of mental illness does he suffer from?
Back in 1973, when I was just entering high school, he was a student at UCLA. He suffered a schizophrenic breakdown, and over a period of about 6 weeks, he went from being completely part of our world and doing quite well at UCLA to really living somewhere completely separate from our reality. He started to see patches of color appearing on the walls. There was a period there when he would listen to the radio and change channels every few seconds and would give very strange explanations for why he was doing so. I now know that that's because many people beginning to suffer from paranoid schizophrenia are convinced that people are talking about them on the radio, and so they keep changing channels to get away from the conversation.
Exactly.
These hallucinations are one of the fundamental defining characteristics of schizophrenia, and it is one of the things that is a major part of why certain things that used to be very, very unusual are now actually pretty common. These random acts of mass murder that we've just sort of learned to accept as part of not only our society, but actually common in Europe as well.
When I was 10 years old, my father was institutionalized for the very same thing. He was a paranoid schizophrenic, as I said, at 10 years old. Starting at around, I guess I was 7, he really began to act up. And then it just got worse and worse and worse, and finally he attacked his mother, my grandmother, in our kitchen, and they took him away, and he was gone for quite some time. But I do remember things like I'd be sitting in the kitchen. We had one of those big old houses in inner city neighborhood with a huge kitchen, and I was sitting there. And this is back when they had the old range and oven, that, you know what I'm talking about, like the range at the oven and the whole deal. And he says to me, "Tom," I said, "Yes." He goes, you see the range over there?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "I'm going to get up right now and twist it like a pretzel." And I just remember thinking to myself, what does he mean by that? I mean, my father, first of all, was about 5'5" and weighed about 130 pounds. He couldn't twist a pretzel into a pretzel, right? So
and you're sitting there trying to understand what significance could this have? Is there some metaphorical meaning I'm missing here?
Right, exactly. So then a short time later, I grew up Roman Catholic. My father was not Roman Catholic; he was Baptist. But I grew up in Roman Catholic. My mother Roman Catholic. So we would go to Mass as a family on Sunday. Are you familiar with Catholicism at all?
Oh, yeah, of course. I teach Western civilization.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. Well, thanks, Clayton. You made me look like a fool there. I appreciate it. But the reason I bring it up is the Stations of the Cross, right? Mm-hmm. They're on the walls of every Catholic church I've ever been in any case. My father began to fidget in his seat and moved around quite. He became very, very agitated. And then on the way home, my mother said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "The stations were talking to me." And again, we're all going, "What?" "Yeah, the stations of the cross, they were talking to me while I was in church. You all have to get out of the car now." And we said, "Why?" He said, "Well, can't you see?" And my mother said, "No, see what?" And he said, "The devil is standing in the road in front of us. We can't go any further. I can't run into the devil." So he backed the car. We all had to get out and walk home, and he backed the car all the way up home. He backed down the street and just kept backing around corners till he finally got home. And then came, that's why my grandparents came to the house in the first place, to say, "Bob," my father's name is Bob, "Bob, what's the problem? Are you crazy?" And he snapped. When she said, "Are you crazy?" he snapped and jumped on her. I thought he was going to kill her, actually. But so, yeah, I know exactly what you went through for a little child. How old were you in 1973?
I was 16. I was just entering 12th grade.
So you're 16, I was 10. It can't be much better for a 16-year-old than it was for a 10-year-old.
And I did not at first understand what was going on, because my parents were to some extent hiding how severe this problem was. Partly they did not understand themselves exactly what was going on. We had, like many Americans, we'd had no contact really with mental illness, and so we really had no idea why he was acting so strange. And unfortunately, this is a very big problem. Most Americans have very limited knowledge, even though schizophrenia afflicts about 1% of the population. For a very long time, there was so much shame associated with it that many people simply had not a clue what was going on. Some of it, too, is that until about 1970, it was pretty common in the United States that if a person developed severe mental illness like this, they would often be hospitalized. And what that meant also was that most of us had very limited contact with people that were severely mentally ill. That was a bad thing, in that we didn't know, there was less knowledge of the subject, but in some respects it was a good thing as well. Deinstitutionalization, when that became public policy in the late 60s and early 70s, meant that an awful lot of severely mentally ill people that had formerly been hospitalized for perhaps a few months to perhaps sometimes many years were now wandering the streets.
Right.
And this meant things like murder rates rose in the 70s, at least significantly, and because of this decision not to hospitalize people for any great length of time. Homelessness became a very big problem in the 1970s and 1980s, largely because of the fact that many of these people, some would manage to do okay on their own in community mental health settings, but a great many others did not. For example, freezing death rates in the United States more than doubled between 1974 and 1984. And a significant part of that is because so many people were now living on steam grates in big cities or sleeping on park benches at night and dying of exposure.
Did your brother Ron have to go through shock therapy? Was that one of his
No, I don't believe that at any point he was ever given shock therapy. Interestingly enough, in spite of the horrible reputation that electroconvulsive therapy has because of movies like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which, let me emphasize, is not a documentary.
Very good point.
Although you'd be amazed how many judges in this country seem to get that impression.
Yeah.
ECT is actually still in fairly common use. It's actually made something of a comeback in the last 20 years because for certain types of severe depression, it is sometimes the only thing that actually helps to bring some people out of it.
Right. I do. My father, when he came home for about a 2-year period after he was hospitalized, institutionalized, came home, and he was in the institution for quite some time. He came home for about 2 years and then left for good because he just couldn't be around. He just couldn't be around the family. That was his decision, not our decision. He made that decision that he would just kind of wander the United States. Mm-hmm. And I do remember one thing he said when he got home. The family was kind of sitting around, and he said, "Well, I learned something while I was at the institution." And my mother said, "What did you learn?" And he said, "I can't act crazy." And she said, "Well, yeah, you can't act crazy, but why do you think you can't act crazy?" he said, "I'm too scared they'll give me shock therapy again." It frightened him so he would try to behave, even though he was still suffering from visions and hearing things. He tried to behave because he was so afraid they do that to him again.
Yeah, it's. As my book explains, the history of the 20th century is often astonishing measures taken by the medical profession trying to find solutions. And some of them you look at them and you say, this reads more like something that a witch doctor would do. But in some cases, things like ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, came out of these early, really quite monstrous experiments that were being done trying to find some solution to the problem. There's been enormous progress made from the 1950s forward in finding various medications that help to at least control the more severe symptoms of schizophrenia. They, of course, often have significant side effects, and this has been one of the reasons why deinstitutionalization didn't work very well, especially a lot of the early medications that were given, things like Thorazine, had side effects that were unpleasant, and many of the people that were given these medications for treatment outside of the hospital were reluctant to continue taking them. Yeah, and once they went off of them, of course, they became really quite unpleasantly ill to themselves and to others. So this is one of these tragedies that we don't have perfect solutions. And when people say, "Well, we don't want to go back to the bad old days of the state mental hospital system," and my answer is, there were definitely problems with the old system, but there are problems with the current system. I take a look at what happened in Aurora, Colorado a couple of months ago. Here was a young man whose psychiatrist had correctly identified that he was a danger to others and called the police.
Right.
And the police took no action. And when I look at Colorado's law on the subject, I see why they took no action.
Right.
There is a provision for emergency commitment, but it requires that you have to be a imminent danger to others or to yourself. And as near as I can tell, this young man didn't qualify as an imminent danger. He was probably talking about killing strangers, but he wasn't actively loading magazines while talking about killing strangers, so that wasn't an imminent danger.
That is unbelievable. And that is a huge problem in the fact that, well, he hasn't harmed anyone yet, so there's really nothing we can do. Someone has to get hurt for us to take action. That's ridiculous.
That's one of the great tragedies that my book describes, is how we went from a system where it was a fairly low burden of proof. There only had to be a preponderance of evidence to hospitalize someone, to the current situation where in most states you pretty much have to kill someone before anyone decides that, this guy really is an imminent danger.
Now, your brother Ron is he still alive, first of all?
Yes, he's still alive. He's in his late 60s now. He lives out on the Oregon coast in a small town. My mother, who is in her 90s, and looks like she's probably going to go on for another 10 or 20 years.
Well, that's good news. That's right.
She provides most of his day-to-day care, making sure that bills get paid, that he doesn't wander off, and generally, as is the case with many schizophrenics, by the time they get in their 50s and 60s, quite a bit less scary of a person. I don't think he's attacked anyone in at least 10 or 15 years now. And in a small town, it sort of works. I mean, people know there's something a little different about him. I think a lot of them assume that he's retarded, even though he's actually quite intelligent.
Usually schizophrenics are, aren't they?
Yeah, they are disproportionately very intelligent people. One of the interesting aspects of this is we know there's a genetic component to schizophrenia, and that families that are afflicted by this are those that have unusually creative and intelligent members.
God, thank God I'm in radio then.
What was that?
I said, thank God I'm in radio then.
Yeah.
The reason that it's interesting because as we talk, you kind of you just have this ability to kind of answer the next question I was going to ask, because I was going to ask you, and in my case, it's very true. How many years did you go through wondering when is this going to happen to me?
Yeah. I really didn't spend very much time worrying about that sort of thing. And I'm not quite sure why that was. I mean, the fact is that by the time you get to your late 20s, your risk of developing schizophrenia is pretty small.
Right.
There are certain things that I avoided doing, which we know are certainly factors. We know that both alcohol and marijuana have now been demonstrated pretty persuasively to be things that if you regularly use them, especially as a teenager, you are increasing your risk of developing schizophrenia. And same thing with LSD. These are all high-risk situations. Longitudinal studies that have been completed in several different places now around the world demonstrate that people that regularly smoke marijuana roughly double their risks of developing schizophrenia. And that risk is dramatically higher if you start before you're 18. This is a time when your brain is still under development.
Does that happen with a lot of other mental illnesses? It seems like there's a chemical imbalance with people that excessively drink alcohol or tie into heroin or different things like that at an earlier age.
It's an interesting question. One of the great difficulties, and why until recently we weren't really too sure what the exact relationship was of for example, marijuana and alcohol to schizophrenia, was that people that have serious mental illness problems tend to go looking for drugs that make them feel better. They're sort of self-medicating, although these are usually not the best choices of drugs. So with the longitudinal studies, you actually take a look at people that well before they start drinking or using marijuana, are they giving any symptoms of these other problems? The Irish, for example, have a reputation as drinkers. And
no.
Of course, you know the curse of the Irish, as it was commonly called when I was growing up.
Yeah.
But it also turns out that there's some evidence that schizophrenia is more common among the Irish. And
really?
So the question you have to ask is the alcohol an attempt to deal with the beginning symptoms, or is the alcohol the cause?
Yeah, that is fascinating. That is absolutely. I did not know that was the case. So a higher incidence of schizophrenia in the Irish.
And that was something that was noticed in the 19th century as Irish immigrants start to move into both the United States and Canada, is that they are very disproportionately present in the mental hospitals. And of course, the Irish have quite a reputation for creativity as well. I mean, look at the number of great poets and writers that have come out of such a tiny little island. 6 Nobel
laureates out of Ireland, actually. How about that?
This creativity aspect too. At least part of what's going on is that the human brain has something called latent inhibition. That is, if you're sitting in a room with a ticking clock, it will, over time, you will tend not to. Ordinary people tend not to hear that ticking clock anymore. It's information that they don't need, and it's distracting. Very creative, very intelligent people tend to have a little bit less of that latent inhibition. They tend to still be able to hear that clock, so they're in a position to reevaluate a pattern, reevaluate information, and figure out what to do with it. Schizophrenics, as they fall into the illness, that latent inhibition seems to completely go away. And it may well be that the brain is simply being overwhelmed by vastly more input than they know what to do with.
Right.
And eventually the brain, in a sense, gives up. It starts to see things and hear things and feel things that are not there.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much bandwidth, so disposing of things that aren't important to you is a very important thing.
Right, but of course, the plus side is those of us who still keep hearing all those signals that the rest of the population sort of tunes out. We're able to look for patterns and things that otherwise we might miss.
It's interesting. I had to ask you. Nobody's ever been able to answer this for me. Maybe you can. I'm fascinated the fact that I have. The family now has, I think, 4 grandfather clocks, one on each floor of the house. I love to be in a room with a grandfather clock. I love the sound of it and the chiming. It makes me very calm. Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's everybody's reaction. That's everybody's reaction. Is like, oh, that's good news.
Some people's reaction is, gee, that's annoying. And other people's reaction is simply, oh, I'd forgotten about those grandfather clocks.
Yeah, I guess it's just the chiming, and I love the the nice slow rhythm of it. I don't know, and Clayton, I can't tell you why. I don't know why.
Well, your mother had grandfather clocks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
So maybe that's one of those things that you grew up with it, and it's got some calming influence for you.
Yeah,
and it has a warm and fuzzy memory for you because of it. As much as I detest smoking, it's one of those vile little habits. Every time I smell someone lighting up a cigarette, it brings back memories of my father.
Oh yeah,
who in spite of his this vile habit that I found repulsive, was an absolutely wonderful person, and so there's something there's something very, very soothing about that smell of someone just lighting up a cigarette for the first time. It reminds me of my dad.
Yeah,
and perhaps the grandfather clocks have that same effect for you.
I think that's exactly right, and smoking too, because my mother and father were both big smokers, and so I know. Clayton, I'm not lying when I tell you my mother could inhale a cigarette, usually a Pall Mall straight, when she was on the phone, and smoke would be coming out of her mouth while she talked for about 30 minutes.
That's true.
It was unbelievable. The smoke just kept billowing out as she talked. It was something to see. One question, a personal question for you is, do you carry with you a sadness because of what happened to your brother Ron?
Yeah, I mean it's not overwhelming, it's not overpowering, but there are times it's hard not to look back. I mean this was the really smart older brother who taught me to read, took me on my first plane flight. Remarkably capable person. When he was drafted in 1966, the Army gave him their general test of intelligence, and they were so impressed that they gave him sort of a unique opportunity. They said, well, if we go ahead and draft you, you'll probably end up in Vietnam. On the other hand, if you volunteer, we can specify where you're going to go for what sort of training.
Mm.
And so he has an honorable discharge 24 hours after he was drafted that was conditional on him volunteering. And so he went, volunteered effectively under duress. They sent him off to become an electronics technician. To learn how to troubleshoot radar for the Nike Hercules missile system, and at the end of his at the end of the class, rather than send him off to Germany to actually troubleshoot these radar systems, they said, "Actually, you're going to become the instructor now." Oh. And that's what he did. While a lot of young men his age were, suffering and dying in the jungles of Vietnam. He spent that whole time in Huntsville, Alabama, teaching people how to troubleshoot electronics problems in radar.
That's an amazing story. Is there any connection? I've never asked anyone this before. Is there any connection whatsoever between people with schizophrenia and, by coincidence, not as cause and effect, but by coincidence, a high-functioning Asperger syndrome?
I'm not aware of the connection to Asperger's. There is a whole bunch of rather interesting connections with other illnesses. We know that, for example, whether a person develops bipolar disorder or schizophrenia seems to be largely determined by environment. The same set of mutations seem to be involved in both international Schizophrenia Consortium published a paper several years ago in which they demonstrated there's about 10 to 15,000 individual mutations that collectively end up deciding whether you'll end up with schizophrenia or bipolar, or maybe you'll be fortunate and not end up with either. But we don't exactly know all the mechanisms yet. We know some things that increase those risks. We also know that we also suspect that there is some sort of infectious agent involved as well particularly in the case of schizophrenia. But it is certainly the case that there are an awful lot of very high-functioning Asperger's syndrome people. You go into Silicon Valley, and unfortunately, what happens when people who are high-functioning because they have a mild form of Asperger's meet and mate with others in that same category is you end up with an awful lot of kids who do not end up high-functioning. They end up with very serious Asperger's to the point where they're not going to become the computer nerds that mommy and daddy were.
What is your solution at this point? I mean, is it legislation? Is it changing the institutions? What do you suggest? One
of the difficulties is that the decision to scrap the the old system of laws and make it extremely hard to institutionalize people has created obviously an enormous problem. And one of the things we can do is we can start to move back towards the older model, which did not require these exacting standards for commitment. Virginia, for example, after the Virginia Tech murders, they ended up changing their law so that there only needs to be a plausible reason to believe that this person might be a threat to themselves or to others for a judge to order at least temporary commitment while the person is evaluated for whether they're a danger or not. That is probably the single most important change. However, a number of states have, in the meantime, largely closed their state mental hospital systems.
You'd think Columbine would have taught them their lesson.
Closed 2 of them in the last couple of years.
Yeah, you make that point again, Andy. It's a good point.
You'd think Columbine would have taught that lesson.
Well, except that in the case of Columbine, the 2 teenagers who committed these mass murders were not. They were not clearly psychotic. One of them was under treatment for mental health problems, but they were certainly not severe enough that would have been a factor. This case, however, was a very clear one, and I have contacts who have been working with the governor and members of the legislature in Colorado to see what we can do to reform the laws. Unfortunately, the state of Colorado decided that they needed the money for K-12 education, and so they did significant cutbacks to their state mental hospital system. The difficulty, of course, is that this didn't really save any money because we spend the money instead on things like we spend the money on things instead like court systems, jails, prisons, trials. And cleaning up, blood on sidewalks. There's as I said, a pretty persuasive case that we're not actually saving any money by shutting down state mental hospitals.
No, absolutely. The book is called My Brother Ron: A Personal and Social History of the Disinstitutionalization of the Mentally Ill. Clayton, Cramer, I guess. Just 2 quick things in closing. I'd love to have you back sometime to ask you the question at that time. Is terrorism a form of mental illness? Because it certainly has that face to me, in any case.
That would certainly be an interesting conversation, and the answer is, unfortunately, yes and no.
Okay. So the yes is?
There are certainly people who are truly mentally ill who are taken advantage of by terrorist organizations to accomplish their ends. However, the people that run most terrorist organizations are not in any conventional sense mentally ill. They have strongly felt ideas and reasons for what they do, but they certainly know they are in touch with reality. The leaders don't send their own sons out to do suicide bombings.
Right, exactly. And in closing, I just want to tell you, this is a true story about the day my father was taken away to the institution. He was institutionalized as a coping mechanism. At 10 years old, I didn't know what a coping mechanism was, obviously. And my sister, who was seven years older than I, we're standing there. Now, there's our father who's, basically frothing at the mouth and just acting wildly in a straitjacket on a gurney, and they're taking him out of the house. And it was just horrifying to watch. And all I was thinking in my head was, I really don't want to turn out this way. I want to do everything I can to make sure I don't turn out this way. And as soon as they rolled by, my sister looked down at me and said, "Tommy, I think they think our dad is nuts." And that bit of humor, and she said it in a very humorous way, and it actually really, really helped me. It's funny how she had to use humor there. It's like, "Hey, kid, this is really tough on you, but, yeah. It really helped me. Clayton Cramer, again, the book is called My Brother Ron: A Personal and Social History of the Institutionalization of the Mentally Ill. Thank you for your time this morning, sir. Great talking to you.
Thank you.
Clayton. Very serious,
I know.
man.
Well, yeah. There was a couple of times I'm like, lighten up, buddy. You can have a sense of humor.
Exactly. Buy online by going to the Amazon.com banner at TomBarnardPodcast.com. They don't charge you a penny more. A small portion of what they sell through our site helps support the show, and it's what keeps the show free for our listeners. Click and shop today on the Amazon banner at TomBarnardPodcast.com. I found him to be a fascinating guy and a pretty interesting subject. But it shows you the difference of having your one of your parents go through it and having a brother go through it. Because they are supposed to, your parents are supposed to be your role models, right?
And they're supposed to take care of you. Well, that's the other thing is that, they talked about the Irish, but how much of that is that the kids are starting to drink because one of the parents was gone or an alcoholic or whatever it happened to be? It's all so cyclical. I mean,
Well, it is. The Irish were the last of the Europeans to get alcohol, too.
Yeah, I've read that.
Yeah, people don't take that into consideration. They were the last. Therefore, the alcoholic gene has not even died off yet. Like in the Middle East, the alcoholic gene has pretty much died off.
Yep.
Portion of the profits of the Tom Barnard Podcast goes directly to the Smile Network. The Smile Network is a nonprofit organization that provides life-altering reconstructive surgeries and related healthcare services to impoverished children and young adults in developing countries. The Smile Network, together we are constructing lives one bright smiling face at a time. Also, the Tom Barnard Podcast is giving away $5,000 on October 11th. It's only, 16 days from now?
And over 6,000 registrants already.
6,000?
Yes.
Jesus. One of our lucky listeners. Well, I'm picking up, I'm picking up a couple of hundred followers a day on social media.
Yeah, I saw that. I've got all the stats. It's amazing.
It is amazing. All you have to do to enter is go to our website, tombarnardpodcast.com, and click on the banner or the Enter Now button. The contest promotes sharing the podcast through Facebook, Twitter, email, and more. We'll contact the winner of $5,000 on October 11th. You'll be interviewed on the show, but only if you're interesting. The 30-day giveaway of $5,000 at tombarnardpodcast.com. So you get $5,000, and the Smile Network also gets $5,000. So it's a great, great thing for everybody. Everybody benefits. Thank you. Enjoy your day.